excited for this topic today, food as medicine. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I specialize in intuitive eating, helping people reconnect to their bodies in a way that can, respond to your cues, but also just nourish yourself in a way that feels really good and authentic to you and your own individual needs. So, food as medicine is the topic we'll dive into. Just a quick disclaimer. This mini workshop is for educational and for informational purposes only. It does not substitute for nutrition, medical, or mental health advice or treatment, and it does not constitute a client-provider relationship. All right, so our objectives. Today we're going to dive into and learn how food can be used as medicine in three different areas in our health. So the first one being bone health, second gut health, and lastly heart health. We'll gain insight to our own nutritional intake of these foods and then also obtain tips for incorporating food as medicine. So, what exactly is food as medicine? It is the concept that integrates nutrition to prevent, manage, and treat chronic disease. There's some core pillars to be exact, we have disease prevention, so using diet to stop chronic conditions before they develop. Clinical intervention, this is using the dietary interventions to manage the illness. And we also have a whole foods focus, so really prioritizing whole foods with specific intention that have root cause targeting. So we're using the specific whole foods to address underlying biological issues like inflammation and so on.
You only have these speed printers, right?
All right, so bone health, let's get started there.
That aren't haven't been tested.
Food is as medicine is used to prevent, delay, or manage chronic conditions like osteoporosis and osteopenia. The osteopenia is lower than normal bone density versus osteoporosis is when there's actual clinical low bone density. The functional food components that we'll talk about today are calcium, vitamin D, vitamin K, and protein. So, a lot of the times when we think of kind of testing, for different deficiencies, we think, oh, blood tests. That's what we'll do to see, how's my calcium level. So, something I want to kind of clarify today as we start to talk about calcium is basically calcium it's what forms the mineral matrix of our bones. So calcium and phosphorus are the minerals that help to, strengthen our bones. And we also have calcium circulating in our blood. Calcium is used for many other things like muscle contraction, and our heart is a muscle. So calcium is utilized to keep our heart beating, which is a very important life-sustaining function. So calcium, blood levels of calcium is our body's priority.
Oh, yeah.
It's really important to have enough calcium in our bones to form that mineral matrix and keep them strong. However, it's a little more important day to day that our heart keeps beating. So our body does a super amazing thing if we're not eating enough calcium to support enough in our bones and enough in our blood. Our body, the blood actually leaches calcium, pulls calcium out of the bones. We have this supply and keeps our blood level of calcium normal. So this can keep our heart beating. The issue there is if we're not eating enough calcium to support bone health and keep our blood levels normal, we're not going to necessarily know this because our blood levels of calcium look normal. We think we're fine, right? But without enough calcium in our diet, we're actually not strengthening the bones. We're not building that mineral matrix like we need to be. So, yeah, I hear this a lot. Oh, my bones are fine. My calcium level's fine in my blood test. I just wanted to kind of clarify your blood calcium is not a good indication of what's going on with your bones. Instead, a bone density scan, what's called a DEXA scan, this is how we look at your bones and look at the bone density. So that's how osteopenia and osteoporosis are diagnosed.
Repeat that password.
So, what are requirements of calcium?
What?
Adults require 1,000 milligrams under the age of 50. And then our needs go up a little bit after 50. They go up to 1,200 milligrams calcium a day. Functional food sources. So we've got the dairy products. This is probably what you think of when you hear calcium: yogurt, milk, kefir, cheese, cottage cheese. These are all really excellent sources of calcium. They all provide around 300 milligrams or so. So, for eating 3 servings of dairy a day, we're pretty much hitting our adult requirement of calcium, because we also get calcium from other foods like broccoli and kale and collard greens. Kale and broccoli, these greens do have a good amount of calcium, but much lower than something like a dairy product. But they do contribute to our overall intake, and they are considered a higher calcium vegetable. But then we also have, in addition to these vegetables and these dairy products, we have other foods that are a good source of calcium. So milk alternatives for those who don't tolerate dairy super well, soy milk, oat milk, um, almond milk, these milk alternatives, as long as it says fortified on the label, they've added calcium, and they also provide about 300 milligrams. So these are a great source of calcium to include, along with tofu and tempeh, edamame, white beans, and chickpeas. Also, fish canned in its bones. I know it might sound a little strange, but specifically because the calcium in the bones, right, it leaches out, it gets more calcium in that fish. Almonds, chia seeds, and sesame seeds. So these are going to be our functional foods when we think of calcium sources for our bones. All right, vitamin D improves the intestinal absorption of calcium. So if we're eating a bunch of calcium, but we're maybe low in vitamin D, we might not be actually absorbing as much calcium as we think. Adult requirements for vitamin D, there is an RDA, recommended daily, amount to eat, but really what we like to do for testing for how much vitamin D do you need, it's good to get a blood test and see where your vitamin D level is. We want it above 30. However, I think 40 to 60 is that sweet spot. So, really we want our blood level to be around 40 to 60. Less than 30 is considered impaired, and then less than 20 is actually considered low. So our functional foods for vitamin D, we'll get that in egg yolks, salmon, and cod liver oil, also seafood canned in its bones, fortified products like orange juice, milk, and milk alternatives. These all give us some vitamin D. However, we also get it from sunlight. Sunlight helps to activate vitamin D in our start the process of the activation of vitamin D in our body. Our kidney and our liver is also involved. But for some of us, we wear sunscreen. We want to protect against sun damage. So we really do need that vitamin D, the UVB rays, in order to activate the vitamin D. So if we're covering up, we're not getting a lot of sunlight, maybe we're not, getting enough vitamin D, we're not making enough from sunlight. So supplements do sometimes come into play when thinking about the functional food, the functional, food component vitamin D. Um, and those supplementation is really tailored to what your blood level says. So you might see 1,000 international units, 2,000. These are kind of common doses that you'd see in supplements. Some people require 5,000 or even mega doses to get their level brought up. So that's going to be really individualized. All right, and then moving on to vitamin K. Vitamin K helps to activate our bone building protein called osteocalcin. It also helps to keep calcium in our bones where we want it. We want hard bones and soft tissues. So it helps to kind of keep calcium from calcifying our soft tissues. It keeps it in the bones where we want it. It also slows the rate of bone loss. We build bones in our teen years into 20s and really up until the age of 30. But once we hit 30, we start to lose a little bone every year, and that bone loss can be accelerated, and it can also be slowed. And so, making sure we're having enough vitamin K is helpful for that. Also, engaging in weight bearing exercise is another way we can slow the rate of bone loss over the years. So, functional food sources of vitamin K, we have fermented foods like sauerkraut, also soybeans, aged hard cheese like Gouda, organ meat, pasture raised egg yolks, and leafy greens. So, these are, yeah, some great sources of vitamin K. And then protein. Protein helps to form the bone matrix. Protein, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it, but just want to highlight that we do want a good source of protein at every meal. 3 to 4 ounces generally is a good portion of protein. We get protein from chicken, fish, beef, eggs, cottage cheese, beans, lentils, and tofu are just a few sources. So, let's talk about functional meals and snacks. So what does this look like in real life? How do we, take in these nutrients? How do we boost our calcium intake? How do we make sure that we're getting enough protein, vitamin K? Um, so some meals. We have salmon salad sandwich. So we want to use salmon canned in its bones, some mayo, mix that together, throw it on some bread, and then adding a side kale salad topped with some slivered almonds. This is going to be, great sources of some calcium and, pretty tasty. We've got tofu bowl. So we have rice, tofu, edamame, sesame seeds, broccoli, and sauerkraut topped with a sauce of your choice, and a yogurt bowl using Greek yogurt, chia seeds, almond butter, granola, and fruit. And then a few snacks being cottage cheese and fig toast with a light drizzle of honey. You could make a smoothie with Greek yogurt, milk, chia seeds, kale, and fruit. And a glass of kefir serves also as a quick, easy, high calcium source. All right, so that wraps it up for the bone health portion. Just a few moments to reflect and think about how many servings of high calcium food do you eat in each day? And what is one way you might be able to boost your bone health? So I'm going to move back to that high calcium slide. You may have the slides already, but just as a reminder, these are those high calcium foods. Check in. How many are you getting in the day? And maybe what ideas you have for boosting this week. Might be, trying some tofu or having yogurt as a snack, or adding edamame and almonds to your salad. Just a few ideas.
Jen, we have one question.
Yes, please.
Can you explain again the difference between osteopenia and osteoporosis that you defined as the beginning?
Yes, yes. So
Bone health study.
osteopenia is lower than normal bone density. So, it means like your bone density is starting to become impaired and lower than we would expect for someone your age, versus and so there's kind of like a Z score and a score they give you on the bone density scan. And then once you kind of go outside of that range, there's actually clinically low bone density, which is categorized as osteoporosis. They kind of call like osteopenia softening of the bones, and osteoporosis is actual porous, low bone density.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if other questions pop up, we can always circle back. But we'll move on to gut health for the sake of time. All right, so gut health, I think, has just received a lot of attention over the last 10, 20 years. We're learning so much about it. You might hear it called the second brain. We produce a lot of serotonin, that happy hormone in our gut. There's a lot of like communication from our brain to our gut. So there's been a lot of focus on gut health for like healthy digestion, but also for our mood. So what do we know? What do we know about food as medicine for gut? Gut microbiome, maybe you've heard that term before. It's essentially just a massive ecosystem, trillions of microorganisms living inside our body, specifically in our digestive tract. The large intestine holds the majority of them. And a healthy microbiome requires high diversity of microorganisms. So we want a lot of them, but we also want a lot of different types. And a healthy gut is linked to better digestion, as I mentioned. So less bloating, just like overall, better feelings of, digestion, bowel movements, improved immune function, and improved mood, and even metabolism. So these gut microbiomes, when they're healthy and happy and fed, actually are linked to better metabolism. So better digestion of our food and better utilization of our food. So the functional food sources that are important when thinking about gut health and really fueling our microbiome are fermented food, fiber, and eating a variety of plant foods. So why do we want to eat fermented food for a healthy gut? This is because the fermented food actually provide that healthy gut bacteria. So they're a source of introducing the healthy gut bacteria into our body. You've probably heard like, oh, eat yogurt after taking antibiotics to help, bring in the quote unquote good bacteria into your body again. That's a great recommendation. Other sources would be, fermented food like kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir mentioned again, right? Miso and Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt mentioned again here too. And I also had talked about sauerkraut already. So you might be seeing a theme already. Like there's maybe some really great functional foods we want to incorporate for multiple reasons in our multiple systems in our body. All right, we want to eat fiber. So this helps with digesting, overall digestion. It adds bulk to our stool. It also helps to feed the healthy gut bacteria. Adult requirements for women under 50, 25 grams. Adult for men over 50, 38 grams. And then those needs go down just a little bit after the age of 50. So we have two different types of fiber. There's soluble fiber, insoluble fiber. And we get soluble fiber, which helps it's basically undigested and kind of helps to feed the healthy gut bacteria. The insoluble fiber helps to kind of add bulk. And also does another source for heart health, which we'll dive into, but helps to kind of add bulk and move the waste through our body. So yeah, soluble fiber, we get that in oats, legumes, avocados, apples, pears, bananas, sweet potatoes, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, chia seeds, and flax seeds. And insoluble fiber sources, and this is just a list of a few. There are more, but these are kind of like the heavy hitters. Whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, veggies with the skin, and fruits with the seeds, like berries. All right, so this is the topic I really wanted to spend some time on today, though, is eating a variety of plant foods to increase gut microbiome diversity. So this has received a lot of popular press these days, and for good reason. There's good research that shows the more variety of plant foods that we eat, the healthier and happier and more varied the gut microbiome is. So when I first read this, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not eating 30 fruits and veggies. Like how I will never be able to reach that goal in a week. But the good news is it's not just fruits and veggies. So it's all plant foods. Plant foods, including fruits and veggies, which I've listed here, but also grains and legumes. So bread, barley, corn, oats, chickpeas, edamame, kidney beans, lentils, popcorn, rice. These are all considered plants. We also have different herbs like basil, black pepper, coffee and tea, cinnamon, dark chocolate, even ginger, thyme, turmeric. These all count. Even just a pinch counts. And then nuts and seeds, almonds, chia seeds, flax seeds, hazelnut, hemp seeds, pistachios, pumpkin seeds, walnuts. These are all going to count towards our 30 plants in the week. So we're going to do an activity to kind of check in with how many plants we're eating. But just before we dive into that, I want to give a few ideas for how we can really boost our plant intake. So, um, someone might be eating oatmeal for breakfast, and maybe they just make oatmeal with water, oatmeal with milk, and that's one plant right there. How do we want to supercharge this with more plants? Well, we can make the oatmeal, add some cinnamon, add walnuts, chia seeds, and mixed berries. Maybe we use three different types of berries. They could be frozen. I personally love to buy frozen berries and mix them in oatmeal and yogurt because it's cheaper, they last, and they taste really good. But yeah, say we use three berries, we use the oatmeal, that's four. We got the chia seeds, walnuts, cinnamon, that's seven plants right there, one meal, right? Counting towards our 30 plants in the week. Can keep a jar of mixed seeds and nuts. You can add these to salads, put them in your trail mix or in your yogurt mixtures, like those, just kind of sprinkle them on what you can. Using mixed veggies, canned or frozen's fine. So instead of just cooking broccoli, maybe cook broccoli with cauliflower and carrots and bell peppers, and which leads to my next tip is that, even eating two different colors of the same vegetables, so having green bell pepper or red bell pepper, both contribute. They count as separate plants. Varying your grains, so maybe sometimes use white rice, brown rice, wild rice, mix it up. And cooking with garlic, onions, different herbs, even a small pinch counts. And lastly, trying to maybe blend veggies into your sauces can be another way. Okay, so I want to spend just a couple minutes on this because I do want to make sure we have time for heart health. But and maybe you just kind of get started on this, but if you kind of can think back to this week and how many plants you've eaten, make a little tally. Uh, and let me go back to that plant. Here we go. So, yeah, think about your breakfast you eat, lunches, dinners, snacks. Remember, even just a pinch of the seasoning is considered a plant. But let's just take like a minute or two just to kind of go through like what's our usual week look like? Maybe just going back, this past week. How many plants in the week are you hitting? If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. If you want to um, write in the chat, how many plants you have tallied, feel free to share. If you maybe want to maybe comment on like how an idea you have for this week for increasing your plants, maybe make a smoothie, and that could be another way to pack a lot of plants in.
Jen, do you have any suggestion on how we can approximate or measure the grams that you mentioned earlier for the servings?
Oh, yeah, that's, I so something like a serving of berries has somewhere in like 4 to 6 grams, depending on the berry of fiber. Something like a serving of rice might have about 2 grams of fiber or 2 to 4, depending. Veggies are also in that like 2 to 5, 2 to 6 range. Um, what other sources did I mention? The beans. Yeah, a good source of fiber generally has in that like 2 to 5 gram range. Um, so, a loose estimation might say, like, if you are including the high fiber foods that I listed, giving them in that 2 to 5, you can kind of just give them 2 to 5 grams and then, kind of figure out the average to get your total. Um, yeah, that would be kind of my quick and dirty recommendation for doing it. you can certainly look it up, and look up online to find exactly how many grams are in. But yeah, berries are the real high fiber foods. Um, and and then you're gonna get, a fair amount in like the nuts. I mean, sorry, the beans, um, and veggies, of course, too. Even something like a more refined bread is going to have like 1 gram in it, 2 grams. So yeah, 2 to 6 grams is what a serving might be of those higher fiber foods, but maybe just kind of average it out to 3 and see where you land.
Jen, we have a question. Are
Mhm.
pickles part of the fermented food that's okay to eat?
Oh, that is a good question. Do pickles have I mean they're pickled. Are I believe they have, yeah, pickles would be included. Hmm.
Thank you. Another question is, I'm eating chia with fruits and yogurt for breakfast. How many days a week is it suggested to eat it?
Chia with, you said fruits and what was it?
Chia with fruits and yogurt?
Oh,
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can certainly eat that every day. There's really no contraindications to that. The only thing I would say is like when we think about wanting to really, for gut health, vary our foods, are you able to get enough variety in your diet with eating the same breakfast every day? Are you able to kind of hit the target of getting 30 different plants in the week? And if not, then it might be good to maybe do like every other day that breakfast and then mix it up with a different breakfast that's going to get you different plants. Okay. Well, oh, go ahead. Is there another question?
Uh, no, hold on, sorry. Would a fiber supplement be okay to add to my food or drink if I don't eat too much fiber foods?
Definitely. Fiber supplements have a time and place. I do recommend getting fiber from food first if possible, because there's just so many other benefits that we get from those high fiber foods, which, as you've seen, they've come up in other different areas of health. And so I really try to recommend, like, let's find creative ways to get your fiber boosted through food. But supplements do have a time and place. Maybe you're traveling, you don't have access to fresh foods, or you want to get your fiber up and you just are still working on building in more food. The thing about fiber supplements is you definitely want to drink enough water when taking them. They can be more constipating if you're not drinking enough water while taking them. So I would just be really mindful that you're drinking plenty of water. Okay, and I'm aware that we just have a few minutes left, so let me just dive into heart health. We'll just go over the highlights. It can be used to prevent, delay, manage conditions like high blood pressure and heart disease. Eating foods that lower blood pressure and reduce inflammation and improve cholesterol. These are all ways that we support heart health. Functional foods are antioxidants, potassium, soluble fiber, which we talked about, and omega-3 fats. So, thinking about antioxidants reduce oxidative stress. So, there's little things like free radicals that go around in our body that actually cause damage. Antioxidants scavenge those and reduce them in our body. Potassium sources also help to reduce our blood pressure. So, I listed some functional food sources that give us both potassium and antioxidants. And they are berries, leafy greens, citrus, grapes, sweet potatoes, beets, tomatoes, dark chocolate, tea, coffee, and turmeric. And I already talked about soluble fiber, so I've listed the sources here again. But the way that soluble fiber helps to for heart health is that it actually binds to and eliminates our LDL, which is called the bad cholesterol. And then lastly, omega-3 fats. These reduce triglycerides in our body, another harmful fat when too high. They slow the buildup of plaque, so that hardening of our arteries that can slow the blood flow through them. And they also slightly lower blood pressure. So our functional food sources are going to be salmon, sardines, mackerel, tuna, walnuts, chia seeds, and flax seeds. And that brings us to our last slide. As I was creating this workshop, I just kept seeing a few foods that were present across two or three of our topics. And so I listed them here that they kind of feel like super functional foods. Now that's my term, right? Like this isn't, you're not going to find this somewhere else, but these feel really important to me when we're thinking across all systems of the bone, gut, and heart health. So, um, if you can, find ways to add these to your diet through adding them to salads, smoothies, yogurt, incorporating them would definitely be beneficial for and very functional and medicinal. All right, so that leads us to questions.
We have one a question here. Is osteoporosis hereditary? My mom had it.
There is a component that puts you at higher risk genetically. Yes. So it certainly could put you in the higher risk category. So you want to surely incorporate, the bone health food components. And it could be a good idea to seek, um, testing to kind of see if you are a higher risk because there is this genetic component but then our lifestyle really matters too. So was this genetic that your mom maybe had it? Did her lifestyle contribute? Things like not eating enough of these high nutrient foods, smoking, not exercising, these kinds of things can also speed up our bone loss. So it could certainly put you at a higher risk, but there's ways to kind of be protect against it, like in today's talk.
Can I get high calcium from tahini like I could get from sesame seeds? That's a
Yeah, yeah.
question.
Hmm.
Do you recommend taking prebiotics and probiotics supplements?
Oh, that's a great question. And the short answer is no, not across the board. I do not recommend these across the board. I think they're not very regulated. So supplements in general are not regulated by the FDA. Pre and probiotics, it's pretty tricky to get a supplement, make sure that everything that you have claimed is in there stays in there, especially when it comes to pre and probiotics. For some people, they work, and I think that's where the individualized approach happens. I think for some people, there is a bit of the placebo effect of like, oh, I'm taking this, I feel better. And even if it is a placebo effect, then I say continue taking it, right? Like whatever is working is working. In some cases, it can be really helpful, but most studies show, from what I've seen, that the food is a better source. So, including those fermented foods like the dairy, sauerkraut, those kinds of things actually tend to show better results than taking pre and probiotics. I have seen where they have been helpful, but I think I always start with food first.
Thank you. Uh, Another question, does drinking olive oil help with gut health?
Hmm. I haven't heard that one. I don't have an answer because I don't want to say no just because I haven't heard it, but I'm not sure about that. I could look into it and get back, and I can send a note to Arlene. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Hard to digest beans.
Mm,
Anything, suggestions?
like they're kind of hard on your tummy to digest. I'm assuming that might mean bloating and maybe some gas. So some people get pretty gassy. Yeah, soaking them can certainly help. Kind of using them sparingly, so not necessarily having a huge portion of them, but just kind of sprinkling them in your salads can sometimes be better tolerated. Certain types of beans go over better for some people, so kind of experimenting with that. And if you're just really having a hard time with beans, then know that there's other foods that you can get, the fiber, the different components that you're looking for. And if you can't eat beans, like it's not gonna, that doesn't make or break your health, but maybe try experimenting with it a bit.
What are good substitutes for Greek yogurt and kefir if you cannot have dairy?
Yeah, so if you can't do dairy, you could certainly do like a dairy alternative. They have like soy yogurts and soy milk and oat milks and hemp milks, and hemp seeds are, a good source. So yeah, you could definitely try a milk alternative or, the made from a milk alternative. Um, Otherwise, if you're looking kind of for that dairy type of thing, like I want to add milk to my cereal, like that's what I'd recommend. But yeah, otherwise, kind of experimenting with some of those other high calcium foods like the tofu or like almonds, almond butter, those could work too.
Thoughts on apple cider vinegar?
Yeah, I think apple cider vinegar is one of those ones I think that if it helps you great, do it. And I don't see any harm in it.
Will it have the same effect if chia seeds or flax seeds are turned into powder and mixed to foods like salads or drinks?
Yeah, that's fine. You could do powder form.
And the last one is, and we promise, because this is a very popular class,
Oh,
are
I'm so
there
glad.
are there any of the suggested seed that's cut through better than the others? If someone is prone to diverticulitis, hubby has been suggested to not eat a lot of seeds.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. The food as medicine it's so individualized. So something that could be good for somebody and a system in general might not actually be good for another person who, so someone with diverticulitis, their intestine is kind of sensitive to getting inflamed and having some issues with like the seeds getting kind of stuck in the pockets. And so we actually would not recommend having nuts or seeds in that case. And so then I would say, all right, look at the other sources, for whatever we're looking to get that. Are we looking for omega-3s? Are we looking for calcium? Like, what are we trying to get from that? And let's find another food that gives you that because I would not advise eating any, yeah, if you have diverticulosis or litis.
Well, we are over our time. We would like to really thank you for being generous with your time, Jen, and we hope to see you again in the future.
Great. Well,
So,
thank you.
yeah, for the participants today, you'll be receiving a copy of the presentation and the videos will be posted on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Jen.
All